It started as a quiet night until the basement door creaked open by itself. Again. And this time, something came with it. Warning disclaimer, this story is a work of fiction, created for entertainment purposes. Some scenes may be unsettling for sensitive viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. It was just past midnight when the silence in the house broke again. The kind of silence that isn't peaceful, but heavy, like the air knows something is wrong. The only sound was the faint ticking of the old wall clock in the living room, marking each second that passed like a countdown. In that suffocating stillness, it happened. A creak, slow and steady, coming from the basement door at the end of the hallway. It had opened, again. People always say old houses make strange noises, wood settling, pipes shifting, wind howling through cracks. But Ellie knew this wasn't that. The door never creaked unless someone opened it. And Ellie, a 23-year-old freelance illustrator who had just moved into her late grandmother's house, had made sure the basement was locked. She always did. Yet now, for the third time this week, the door stood slightly ajar, revealing nothing but pitch darkness beyond. The hallway stretched out long and narrow, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. It swung ever so slightly, though no windows were open. The walls were lined with dusty old family photos, most of them too faded to make out clearly. But Ellie always felt the eyes in those pictures followed her, especially when she passed the basement door. The air smelled of old wood and damp stone. It clung to her skin, heavy and cold. Ellie reached for her phone to use its flashlight, her hand trembling more from instinct than fear. She wanted to believe it was just a draft. She wanted to believe the lock hadn't failed. But deep inside, something told her the house wasn't empty. Not entirely. When she moved in, the neighbors had been friendly but cautious. They spoke kindly of her grandmother, but often glanced at the house as if it carried a weight, an unspoken memory they preferred not to revisit. One elderly woman had even whispered, "Don't open the basement. That door should stay closed." She made sure of that. Ellie had laughed nervously back then, thinking it was just old superstition. She stepped closer to the door, her bare feet making no sound on the wooden floor. The crack where it stood open seemed too perfect, like it had been left that way on purpose. The air grew colder the closer she got, her breath now visible in the hallway light. She hadn't turned the heat off. She was sure of it. As she reached out to touch the doorknob, something inside her screamed not to. But curiosity is a strange thing, it pulls at your gut even when your instincts say run. Her fingers brushed the metal. Ice cold. And then she heard it. A whisper. Soft, childlike. Coming from below. Ellie, she froze. Her name, said in a voice that sounded so familiar, but impossibly distant. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She tried to convince herself it was her imagination, a trick of stress and fatigue. But the whisper came again. Louder. Closer. She yanked her hand away, stumbling back, eyes wide with disbelief. No one else was in the house. No one alive, anyway. Years ago, when Ellie was just a child, she remembered playing in the backyard while her grandmother watched from the porch. There had been a boy, she couldn't quite recall his name, but they used to play hide and seek. One day, he vanished. Her grandmother had never spoken about it again. The basement had been locked ever since. Ellie shook her head. That couldn't be real. Could it? She backed away from the door, reaching for her phone again. The flashlight flickered, then died completely. Her screen went black. Dead battery. And then, just as she turned to run, the door creaked open another inch. Then another. Something moved in the darkness beyond it. And just as Ellie's breath caught in her throat, something unseen knocked 3 slow knocks from the inside of the basement door. She wasn't alone anymore. Ellie ran into the living room, her breath shaky, but every step felt heavier, as if the cold air from the basement was trying to pull her back. Her hands trembled as she tapped her phone, desperate to turn the flashlight back on, but the screen remained black. Dead. No charger nearby. The only light was a small candle she had forgotten on the corner table earlier. She grabbed it with hesitation, shielding the flickering flame with her palm. As she stepped slowly back toward the hallway, the candlelight cast tall, warped shadows along the walls. Every portrait seemed to shift subtly, faces that once looked straight ahead now tilted slightly, watching her. She told herself it was a trick of the light. It had to be. But the air had changed. It was heavier, thicker, like she was underwater. The hallway, which once felt narrow, now seemed endless. The basement door was still open, wider now. She could no longer see where the stairs began. The shadows had swallowed them. And that voice, her name, still echoed faintly in her ears, even though no one had spoken again. Trying to calm herself, Ellie whispered, "It's just an old house. Old wood. Old air. That's it." But even she didn't believe that anymore. She remembered something else now, something from when she was a child. Her grandmother had once told her never to play near the basement. Not because it was dangerous, but because it remembers. Ellie had laughed back then. She thought it was just a spooky bedtime story. But now, standing inches from that creeping darkness, she wondered if her grandmother had been serious all along. A sudden bang startled her. The door to the guest bedroom slammed shut by itself. The candle flickered violently, then almost died. Ellie froze. Then came another sound. Footsteps. Not from behind her. From beneath her. Soft. Slow. Barefoot. They climbed the stairs slowly. One by one. But she couldn't see anything in the darkness. Only feel it, like something pressing against her skin. "Who's there?" she asked, her voice small, nearly cracking. No response. Just the creaking of the last step. And then silence. The kind that rings in your ears. Ellie didn't move. She didn't breathe. She held the candle closer to the basement door, hoping to see something, anything, but there was only blackness. That and a faint scratch along the wooden frame, near the doorknob. She leaned closer, squinting. It looked like letters. No, a name. Ellie, not Ellie. Not her name. Ellie. That was what her grandmother used to call her as a child. No one else did. No one could have written that. No one alive. Suddenly, something cold brushed her ankle. She gasped, jerking the candle toward the floor, but nothing was there. She stood back, breathing heavily, heart pounding so loud she could barely hear anything else. But in that moment of silence, she heard something unmistakable. A small giggle. From downstairs. A child's voice. Ellie stepped back slowly. Then again. The air behind her felt warmer, almost normal. But the closer she got to the stairs, the more the house seemed to shift around her. The floors creaked differently. The shadows no longer moved with her. They moved on their own. And then, out of nowhere, came a soft thud from behind the basement door. Not something falling. Something landing. She didn't dare look. Not yet. But deep inside, she knew she wasn't dealing with a draft or a broken lock. Something had been waiting in that basement. Watching. Remembering. Just like her grandmother had warned. But what did it want? And why now? The candle flickered again. The shadows danced. The door creaked once more, opening just a little further. And then the voice came again. Clear. Right at the edge of the dark. "Come play, Ellie." Ellie didn't sleep that night. She sat in the corner of her living room, clutching the melted candle stub as if it could still protect her. Every creak, every soft shift of the house made her flinch. The basement door remained open, its gaping black mouth never once closing. By morning, the shadows had retreated, but the cold hadn't. The house was freezing despite the thermostat reading 72. Her breath still clouded in the air. She couldn't stay. She needed answers. That afternoon, Ellie visited the local library, digging through town records and old newspapers. What she found sent chills down her spine. A boy had indeed gone missing on that street in 1997, Timmy Holtz, age 9. Last seen playing near the woods behind her grandmother's house. The article mentioned that he was last seen with a neighbor girl, but no name was ever confirmed. Ellie's chest tightened. She couldn't remember the boy's name, but she did remember playing hide-and-seek in those woods. Had it really been him? The librarian, an older man with cloudy eyes, noticed her reading and muttered quietly, "That house, it's not a good place. That basement's been shut longer than you've been alive. If it's open now, someone made a mistake." Ellie asked what he meant, but he only shook his head, his lips pressed in a thin line. Back at the house, the atmosphere had shifted again. The photos on the walls weren't just watching anymore, they seemed to change. One showed her grandmother's old living room, but the reflection in the mirror behind the couch showed a boy standing in the background. He hadn't been there before. Ellie blinked and looked again. The photo was back to normal. She rushed upstairs to the attic, where her grandmother kept boxes of journals and old belongings. Dust choked the air, but she tore through the boxes anyway. One notebook, bound in cracked leather, had her name on it, Ellie, not Ellie. Inside, her grandmother had written something chilling. "He keeps asking for her. I hear him at night. He knocks. He whispers. He wants her back. I sealed the door, but it won't hold forever. If she remembers him, he'll come through." Ellie stumbled back, the notebook falling from her hands. She didn't know what terrified her more, that her grandmother knew what was in the basement, or that it was waiting for her to remember. That night, the knocking returned, this time, not from the basement. It came from the closet in her bedroom. 3 slow knocks. She didn't move. Didn't even breathe. Her bedroom light flickered twice and then died. The closet door inched open, creaking with painful slowness. And then, complete silence. Suddenly, the air shifted behind her. She turned around and screamed. A pale figure stood at the edge of her bed, a boy, no older than 9, his face blurred, features slightly shifting, as if her mind couldn't fully grasp him. His clothes were old, dirty, and wet like he had just climbed out of something deep. "You forgot me," he whispered. Ellie scrambled out of bed, falling to the floor. When she looked back, he was gone. The closet door was shut. She didn't sleep again. She barely dared to move. By morning, she packed her bags and called her best friend, Maya. She hadn't spoken to her in weeks, but she needed someone. Maya agreed to come and stay for a few days. She didn't believe in ghosts or haunted basements. "It's probably just stress," she said. Maya arrived that evening with her usual brightness, trying to lighten the mood. Ellie smiled weakly, thankful not to be alone. But something felt off. As Maya walked through the house, she glanced at the basement door with unease. "Why is it open?" she asked. I can't close it," Ellie replied. They tried together. The moment they touched it, a loud groan echoed through the floorboards, and all the lights in the house flickered violently. Then they heard it, movement beneath the floor. Fast crawling. Scraping nails along the wood. It circled the house from underneath. Maya's expression shifted from playful to horrified. "I think something just touched my ankle," she whispered. Ellie didn't answer. She felt it too. The thing wasn't just in the basement anymore. It had started to spread. And somewhere inside her mind, a memory stirred, blurry and buried, but not gone. Something she had done as a child. Something she had forgotten. Ellie and Maya stood frozen in the hallway, backs pressed to the wall as the creaking beneath the floor grew louder, faster, circling them. The sound wasn't random anymore. It was calculated. It knew where they were. The old wooden boards flexed under their feet like something massive was crawling just beneath the surface. Neither of them dared to move. The basement door had now swung fully open on its own, the inside still pitch black like a void, absorbing all light, all warmth. The temperature had dropped so much Ellie could see her breath even though the thermostat read 72. Maya reached out, grabbing Ellie's wrist. Her grip was tight, trembling. "We need to leave. Right now." Ellie nodded. They turned toward the front door and ran. But just as Maya's hand reached the knob, All the lights in the house shut off at once. The air pressure dropped violently, like they had just been sealed inside a vacuum. Every door in the house slammed shut, one by one, in a horrifying domino of sound. Then silence. A low hum began to fill the air. Not mechanical. Not natural. It pulsed, vibrating in their bones like something was pressing against their very nerves. Suddenly, Maya screamed and fell to the floor. Her back arched unnaturally, eyes wide open but not blinking. Ellie dropped beside her, shaking her, shouting her name. Maya's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Just a thin, slow stream of air, like she was gasping without lungs. Her body jerked once, twice, then went still. Maya! Ellie sobbed. But then Maya's eyes slowly rolled back toward Ellie, her mouth still open, and whispered, "He's awake now." Then she collapsed, breathing normally again, confused and terrified. What just happened? Ellie didn't answer. She couldn't. She could hear something else now. Footsteps. But not from downstairs. From upstairs. They both looked up. The creaking above them matched human pacing, slow, steady. Back and forth. It stopped directly above their heads. Ellie held her breath. The ceiling above them suddenly groaned and cracked, and flakes of paint drifted down. The thing, whatever it was standing just inches above. Maya whispered, "This isn't your house anymore." Ellie looked at her, confused. Maya didn't even seem to realize she'd spoken. Then came the whisper again. From the ceiling. From the basement. From the hallway. "Come back to me." Ellie stood up slowly, legs shaking, heart pounding so hard she could barely hear anything else. Her instincts screamed at her to run. But where? Every window had fogged over. The door wouldn't budge. Her phone still dead. And now the mirrors in the hallway began to fog as well, but from the inside. Words began to form on the glass, written in something that looked like frost, but moved like ink. "You left me. You forgot. You promised." Memories came rushing back. The boy. His name. It wasn't Timmy. It was something else. Something familiar. Someone she had once cared about. And then a new sound. Laughter. But not from a child. It was older. Deeper. It echoed from every corner of the house, shifting pitch like multiple voices laughing at once. The basement door slammed shut behind them, and every light burst back on blinding white. Maya was gone. Ellie screamed, spinning in every direction, but Maya was nowhere to be seen. No sound. No footsteps. Nothing. Then the whisper came again, right behind her ear. "She's with me now." Ellie turned, candle stub still in her hand, but it barely flickered anymore. She backed into the living room, wild-eyed and panicked. Shadows shifted unnaturally around her. One shadow didn't move with the others. It stood still, then moved forward on its own. She ran upstairs. It was the only way left. The stairs groaned and bent beneath her weight like something was resisting her climb. The air grew thicker. By the time she reached the landing, her lungs burned from holding her breath. The hallway was longer than it had ever been before. And standing at the end of it, just before the attic stairs, was the boy. His head was tilted. His eyes were black. Not hollow, just infinite. He didn't move. He didn't speak. But Ellie knew he was waiting. Not for her apology. Not for forgiveness. He was waiting to be remembered. And the moment she did, he would never let her go. Ellie took a step back from the boy at the end of the hallway, her heartbeat thundering in her chest. He didn't move. He just stared. His black eyes, too deep and wide for a human face, seemed to swallow the space between them. The air was thick like syrup, impossible to breathe. The hallway behind her suddenly seemed to stretch farther away, like the house was bending space around her. She wanted to scream. Run. Wake up. But there was no waking up. This was real. And then, the boy spoke. "I waited. You never came back." Ellie's knees buckled. She remembered that voice now, not from her dreams, not from the whispers in the house, but from her childhood. From the woods. From the basement. His name wasn't Timmy. It was Eli. The name her grandmother had given her wasn't just a nickname. It wasn't random. It was a cover. A shield. Because Ellie wasn't the only one who had lived in that house. There had been another child. A twin. Ellie stumbled back, hands shaking, whispering, "No, that's not possible. I was an only child. I've always," but the memories crashed over her like a wave. 2 beds. 2 toothbrushes. Games in the dark. A giggle that was never hers. A small hand in hers as they snuck down into the basement to play. And then, the storm. The power going out. The doors slamming shut. The silence that followed. She didn't forget him. She was made to forget him. Her grandmother hadn't locked the basement because of something evil trapped inside. She had locked it because of what Ellie had let in. "You left me there," Eli whispered, his voice now echoing through the walls. "You promised you'd come back. You told me to hide." I didn't know," Ellie cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I was just a kid. I was scared you were scared." His voice rose, distorting. "I died in the dark." The lights burst again. Glass exploded down the hallway, and the walls began to bleed black water. Ellie turned to run, but the stairs had collapsed into a rotted, impossible spiral leading nowhere. She was trapped. The boy's figure began to shift. He grew taller, limbs stretching unnaturally, face flickering between child and something far, far older. And then she heard Maya's voice. But not in her ears, in her mind. "He showed me everything," Maya said from somewhere below. "He's been here, the whole time." Ellie fell to the floor, covering her ears. She couldn't take it anymore. But then something even worse happened. Her reflection stepped out of the mirror at the end of the hallway. It was her, but not. This version of Ellie had blood down her arms. Her face was cracked like porcelain, and her smile was inhuman. Her eyes glowed faintly, like embers beneath ash. And when she spoke, her voice sounded like dozens stacked on top of one another. "You should have stayed buried too." Suddenly, all the doors along the hallway burst open at once. Figures poured out, twisted, shadowy children, some with no faces, others with gaping mouths that screamed without sound. They reached for her, pulling at her clothes, her skin, trying to drag her somewhere unseen. Ellie screamed, kicking, punching, doing anything to fight back, but their grip was too strong. "Why now?" she cried out. "Why are you doing this?" The boy Eli appeared directly in front of her, eyes full of grief and rage. "Because you remembered." Just as they began to drag her toward the attic door, it flew open, revealing something even darker above. A space not part of any normal house. Something vast and alive. A void filled with whispers and flickering shapes. Ellie clawed at the floorboards, splinters digging into her fingers, but it was no use. She was being pulled upward now, not down. The house had turned inside out. And it wanted her back. Now Ellie has no way out. No more locked doors to hide behind. The memories she once buried have come back with claws and teeth. And the boy she left behind? He's not the only one waiting. So now we ask you, what would you do in this situation? Would you try to remember what you forgot? Or would you let yourself be taken? Do you think Ellie will survive what comes next? Ellie screamed as the attic's darkness swallowed her legs. She clawed at the floorboards, her fingernails breaking, leaving red smears across the wood. The ghostly hands of children pulled at her from all directions, some whispering, others giggling, all cold and relentless. The boy Eli stood motionless at the far end of the hall, watching. His eyes had changed. No longer just black, but filled with flickers of light, like tiny souls dancing within them. He wasn't just a ghost. He was something older. Something hungry. "I didn't mean to forget you," Ellie cried, her voice hoarse. "I was a child. I didn't know." The attic pulsed above her like a beating heart, and the whispers grew louder, surrounding her in every direction. The air stank of rot and mildew. She could feel herself slipping, not just her body, but her mind. Fragments of memories poured in, sharp and raw. The games. The promise. The day she told Eli to hide, then ran when the storm hit. Her grandmother finding her alone and confused, and telling her there was never a boy. The lies had been protection. But the truth had never left. Ellie made one final, desperate choice. Instead of resisting, she let go. In an instant, everything stopped. No more voices. No more hands. Just silence. Ellie stood, no longer in the hallway. No longer in the attic. She was inside a different version of the house now. Same structure, but faded, grayer, like a memory rotting from the edges. The air was heavy and still. She turned slowly and saw him, Eli, standing in the center of a small, familiar basement. He looked like he did back then. Just a boy. Dirt-stained shirt, wide eyes, trembling. "You left me here," he whispered. Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I didn't know how to come back." He stepped forward, and for a moment, she thought maybe, just maybe, he wanted forgiveness. But then his face twisted, his body snapping into unnatural angles. His mouth opened too wide, filled with rows of teeth that didn't belong in a child's body. The ground beneath her cracked. "You brought them," he growled. "And they'll never let you go now." From behind him, shadows spilled into the room, dozens of them. Children. Adults. Figures that had never been given peace. Souls he had gathered. Souls she had unknowingly drawn in by reopening the door. They circled her. Ellie backed away, breath shallow. She pulled the melted candle stub from her pocket. Useless. But something else came with it, a page torn from her grandmother's journal. Words scrawled in Latin and symbols she didn't understand. Her grandmother had been trying to protect her all along. Ellie didn't know if she could use it, but it was all she had left. She read it out loud. The room shook. Eli screamed not in pain, but in fury. The shadows shrieked and backed away, just slightly. Ellie kept reading, louder this time, as the wind whipped around her. Lights burst. The floor cracked beneath her feet. "Stop." Eli's voice boomed in every direction. His form now stretched across the room, massive and warped. "You don't belong here." Ellie shouted the final word, and in one violent flash, the room exploded with light. When she opened her eyes, she was back in her house. The basement door was shut. The air was warm. The pictures on the wall were still. She dropped to the floor, exhausted, crying half in relief, half in grief. The nightmare was over. Or so she thought. She rose shakily and called out, "Maya." No answer. She checked every room. Empty. Only one thing had changed. On the hallway wall, where there had once been a portrait of her grandmother, a new photo had appeared. It showed Ellie, standing in the basement, holding the candle. But it wasn't her expression. She was smiling. Cold. Unblinking. And behind her, barely visible in the photo's shadows, stood Eli. A hand on her shoulder. Watching. Still waiting. What would you do if your memories came back with claws? Do you think Ellie ever truly escaped? Or did she just take his place? For days, Ellie wandered the house in silence, the trauma still fresh, her body present, but her mind floating somewhere between memory and dream. The basement door remained shut now, sealed with a thick chain she wrapped around it herself. Still, she checked it every hour. Not to see if it was locked, but to make sure it hadn't opened on its own again. No one believed her, of course. The police arrived after a concerned neighbor reported screaming, but there was no sign of a struggle. Maya's things were gone, as if she had never come. The officers asked if Ellie had been under stress. If she had imagined it all. She didn't even argue. What was the point? There was no explaining what had happened. No proving what she had seen. And worse, there was no telling what still remained. The old house felt different now. Quieter, yes, but not safe. Still. Watching. She had survived, but only just. She was tired, but she couldn't sleep. Every time her eyes shut, she saw the attic, the hallway, the boy's black eyes. Eli. She remembered everything now. They were twins. He was the quieter one, always following her, always hiding behind her when he was scared. The day the storm hit, they had snuck into the basement to avoid getting caught sneaking snacks. When the lights went out, Ellie panicked and ran upstairs, just for a second, just to get help. But the door slammed behind her, and by the time her grandmother opened it, Eli was gone. The adults had lied to protect her. She had blocked it all out. The missing posters. The funeral she didn't remember. The grief that wasn't hers to carry. Until now. Now he was a part of her. Some days, she heard footsteps above her room when no one else was there. Other times, she'd find small handprints on the inside of her bathroom mirror, even though she lived alone. At night, when the wind picked up, she sometimes heard faint knocking. From the closet. Or beneath the bed. But the worst was the reflection. Every mirror in the house had a delay now. She would move and her reflection would pause. Then catch up. 1 second behind. Just enough to make her doubt which one of them was real. She began covering the mirrors. But one always ended up uncovered by morning. Then came the dreams. Not nightmares, dreams so normal they terrified her. Playing tag in the backyard. Sitting at a breakfast table with her grandmother and Eli. Laughing. The version of her in the dream was younger, lighter, unburdened. But when she'd wake up, her fingers would be covered in dirt. Her feet wet. And the smell of the basement, damp, old stone and mildew, would linger in her room. It wasn't over. It would never be over. One night, unable to stand it any longer, Ellie lit the old candle again. Just to feel like she had some control. She sat at the edge of the hallway, facing the basement door, and waited. "I'm here," she whispered into the dark. "I remember you. I didn't mean to leave you." Nothing happened. Then, a creak. The air grew cold. The photos on the wall shifted. And then, silence. For the first time in weeks, Ellie fell asleep on the floor, candle burning beside her. She dreamt of nothing. Peace. The next morning, she awoke to sunlight warming her face. The door was still shut. She smiled faintly, almost convincing herself it might be over. That maybe, in remembering, in facing the truth, she had broken the cycle. Maybe she had finally said goodbye. Until she walked past the hallway mirror. And stopped. Her reflection wasn't smiling back. It stood still, its face blank. Then, slowly, it raised a hand, placed a finger to its lips, and whispered, "Shh. He's not done with you yet." What do you think? Did Ellie ever truly escape? Or is she part of the house now, just like Eli? Would you have opened that basement door again? Tell us what you'd do in the comments below, and if you want a sequel, let us know. Because sometimes, the scariest stories don't end. They wait. And they remember. Always.